Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Americana, the show where we talk about everything political that's happening in our country. I am Shakia, bringing a Democratic voice of reason.
And I'm Willie, bringing the Republican voice of reason.
Well, coming up today, we're diving into the role of healthcare and the government. Who's responsible for what? Well, stay tuned. This is Americana. Well, here's the part of our show where we get started with our talking points for the day. Are you ready? Let's go, Will.
All right, let's get started. So today, it's called Back to the Basics. You ready?
Oh.
This is Trump's strategy to win the culture war. So we know, you ready?
I'm ready.
That there are issues with he wants to dismantle DEI. I know y'all.
Oof, it's a trigger word.
There is 325% increase in DEI spending. He wants to protect women's sports. As I've said before, I know you think we're infatuated with it, but we need to protect women's sports. We don't need to have men out there in the locker rooms. Over 94% of the female athletes are opposed to biological males competing in women's sports. He is defining gender in law, men and women. That's it. Cracking down on fentanyl and fighting censorship. These are all things that are the culture war at hand in the United States. President Trump is taking his head on, and we're going to talk about it.
Interesting. So there's a few things that we'll talk about further.
Let's go, I'm ready.
But you and I, Will, we've always had opposing views on this, what I'm about to share with you, which is abortion. Okay. Ooh, Mufasa, right? It makes you shudder. But yeah. I read an article earlier that it said that the U.S. has let in more births and infant mortality rates since the abortion bans have gone into effect. And so that statistic actually targets marginalized communities. And you know that I am for us, by us, all the time, every day, 365, right? And so I look forward to discussing with you the health of this country, why all of the culture wars topics that you mentioned only has a viewpoint catered to women. Men aren't necessarily in that equation, but I look forward to discussing that in further detail with you throughout this show.
Okay, I'm excited about it.
All right, let's get into it.
We're going to talk about it.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So let's talk about what you mentioned. When I mentioned about protecting women's sports, that is dealing with
the transgender.
Men. Men should not be participating. Biological men should not be participating in women's sports. Now, transgender is not a gender, okay? We have male and female. Y'all can write me later. But I just feel like we need to protect women. Now, this is the thing. In the beginning, it was always a cry that President Trump was out there grabbing women's this.
He was grabbing them by the labia.
And he has issue with women, but here he is wanting to protect women. And now the Democrats are opposing him protecting women, the same people that said that he was against women. So which is it? Is he trying to protect them, or is he out there just trying to grab every woman up in the street?
I don't think that'll ever leave Trump. I think he will always be a pervert until he really confesses his sins and get the true help that he needs. He's a narcissist. And so, yes, he built his campaign on talking and targeting about the LGBTQIA community, in particular the trans community. Like I've mentioned before, only 1% of this country identifies as trans, but yet there is so much legislation and emphasis on their rights and what they can and cannot do. I told you last week, or earlier this week, I believe, that there should be a transgender section of sports. I am for that, actually. If they want to have, when I say they, meaning the Republican Party, if you want to have equal rights, why not give them their own section of sports, their own category of sports. We do that for restrooms.
So if we do that, then do you not think that's going to open a can of worms? Because, you know, here we are in America that you want there to be equality for black and brown people. So then what if that opened the can of worms and they said, okay, now we're back to black-only sports and white-only sports?
I would be okay with that. And you would too, to be honest, because you've always talked about how we don't need people to start our own town. We don't need
we
people.
Don't, but I'm not.
You want to go back to Black Wall Street, so would you be opposed to that?
But I am all for Black Wall Street, but I'm all for Black Wall Street is inclusive in the fact that it is part of the American dream. Now let's talk about abortion.
Now you know good and well, Will.
Let's go into that.
Don't do that, Will.
Tell me your statistics about this, because this is what's that's problematic for me, is that this is always tied into or takes away from the essence of this is a child. And you know we have this is our disagreeing point. We've done argued this for months. But why is it that that is not the conversation at hand? Who is going to protect the unborn?
Yes, and there's an issue when a woman decides to abort her pregnancy. But there's also a greater issue when she chooses to have this baby and there's no resources for her to help take care of this child. Hence why all of the federal spending is now frozen, thanks to Elon Musk and his crew. But true, is that true though?
Statistically, what's happening with abortion is individuals who are, I call it free will abortions. No. It's not because they're having complications.
No.
It is the majority of the individuals who are getting abortion is because they're out there and they don't want to take responsibility.
No, baby.
That's the first thing. Then the second part to this is what you mentioned about the resources. There are tons of resources for these young ladies, older ladies, whatever, to be able to give birth and have the resources to take care of their child.
I'm really trying to be respectful.
But I'm being honest. There are resources out there.
Okay.
But the question is, there are pregnancy centers, and this is what the Democrats are trying to shut down. In fact, I have been part of boards where there are articles, New York Times, that are attacking pregnancy centers for coming out and trying to help these women.
So real quick, do you know that there is legislation that's been proposed initially by a Mississippi lawmaker that says that there is an erection, what is it called? Contraception Begins at Erection Act. It is now proposing legislations on a man's penis if he decides to ejaculate without the intent of becoming a father.
That's garbage. It ain't going nowhere.
We have to take a quick commercial break right after this. It's the hypocrisy for me.
But
y'all want to legislate a woman's reproductive rights, but yet y'all want to ejaculate freely. That is so crazy. We'll be back, y'all. This is Americana.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is our commercial break, and we're just saying hello to all those who are still watching and listening out there in the social media world. And so, as you can tell, we're already getting heated up. We're only in our first part of the evening. So I can take it and tell you that it's going to be probably more interesting as there's some hot topics coming up. But what I would say is continue to comment. We are reading the comments. Continue to be involved and engaged. I am super excited about you diving in and coming along with us, because truly, this is what makes America great again. See you soon.
Hey folks, welcome back to Americana. Let's get into point, counterpoint.
All right, now we're talking about healthcare and government. I'm excited about this. So the conversation has been, we're going to go here. The conversation has been, there's wants to be cut in Medicaid and want to be cut, but this is what I dug up. Medicaid reform is needed because it will cut $2 trillion in spending. This does not mean, I remind you, we're talking about waste reduction And it is not service elimination. It's talking about waste, people. And this is the part where Democrats jump in and say, he wants to cut Medicaid. They don't realize that there's a lot of, as we call it, that fat around some of these budget items that causes for us to be with $2 trillion in spending, where we're wanting to expand services that actually help, but where there's things that we can cut, just like any budget. If you're right now, you're writing a budget out for next month, say March, you're preparing, what do? You find out where you can cut back and where you can add to, and that's what he's doing. The second thing is he's protecting seniors. This is all about Social Security, and Medicare remains untouched. Untouched. These are facts. You can go and look at. This is cutting government bloat because Obamacare exploded costs. So we are still seeing the damage of Obamacare. The private sector innovation, I've always said this, it is very important for us to have the private sector because competition in these United States of America is healthy. We do not need a one-size-fits-all type of government or private sector insurance. Lastly, of course, the Dems want bigger government. This has always been the number one thing that the Democrats always speak about is expanding. They want to expand the Supreme Court. They want to expand other judges. They want to expand, spend, and even give themselves a pay raise when they do absolutely nothing but march up and down, as I said, the Capitol and do no work at all. So I think it's disheartening to lie to the American people to make it seem like they're out here trying to save the day when it's actually President Trump and his administration.
I think you should take some water because you spewed a lot of hateful things. Go ahead and just take a sip of your water. I will take a sip. Yes, please. I think it's misleading of the Republican Party to distort the truth and wave a flag over here while there is smoke and brimstone that is behind the scenes that's happening. So during the first few days into Trump's office, he signed a number of executive orders that would actually impact healthcare. There's a ton of them, so I had to write them down. Give me a second. So the first thing is the Affordable Care Act. You kind of hinted towards that. I really would be interested to see how in the next few months or even a year or so, the enrollment would look compared to when Biden was in office. When Biden was in office, there was at least, I think, 24 million people who actually enrolled for ACA. Now that Trump has tampered with the deadline for enrollment, that's going to impact a lot of people, which would in return impede on their health care and their needs. Secondly, drug prices for prescriptions. We'll get into that a little later. Artificial intelligence is one that's really creepy to me. I know the Biden administration had implemented this bill that would allow safe and conscious given artificial intelligence to impede in healthcare, but now Trump has actually did away with that. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. There's going to be a plan for that, for AI, within like the 180 days that he'll be in office. The World Health Organization, the WHO, we are no longer a part of WHO. And that, to me, is very alarming. And his reason was because he said that they weren't being fair towards how much money that they were requiring the United States to pay compared to the other countries that were a part of the alliance. I interrupt you. Hold on now. We got to talk about gender-affirming care. We've already talked about that. The COVID-19, now that, JFK Jr. has been affirmed, this is really alarming, right? We have folks who have been impacted by polio when they were children. We have people who obviously died and families were impacted with deaths during the pandemic that fell under Trump's watch. What is he doing regarding the health of this nation should another pandemic or an outbreak of disease happen? I'm not done. There's a ton of things. Abortion spending. We've already talked about abortion. Regulatory freeze and a freeze on federal grants. Healthcare providers should track the progress of this. They should track the progress because it's going to have to go through the courts, obviously. And you mentioned the Dems, we want to expand the courts. But I'm really quite impressed with the judges who are standing up to Trump and saying, no, we're going to block this because this is inhumane and this goes against the Constitution. I'm finished. Let's talk.
Okay, so let's talk. First of all, what these judges is not going to fly. We already know it's not going to work. Let's talk about vaccines. no one has come against the vaccines. We've got, most of us have
That is not
Hold on,
true.
I want to explain. Now let you finish, reclaiming my time.
Yeah.
The vaccines, it was about the COVID vaccine it did not have enough time to be tested. It was an experimental drug. Many people, proven facts, are now getting the complications and having complications from this experiment of what was called a vaccine. It was put out too fast and too soon. Even the administration had to come back and even make that acknowledgement that they wish that even within Florida, that was pull back and say, hey, we have to apologize. We should have never shut this down. Should have never did this. We should have waited to get the facts.
So can I ask you a quick question on that? My question for you is, if that is true, what is the alternative to should there be another outbreak or another pandemic that we face? Are you saying that there should be no vaccines, that there should be no type of medication or sanity amongst the living, if I should say? Like, what is your alternative to there not being any vaccines?
It's not about not having vaccines. It's about proper testing. It would just be like if you just discovered something and you just gave it over to someone and say, hey, take this. It has been no testing done. That person dies because you gave them some test.
I hear you. And yes, it's yes and, right? If we did not have the COVID vaccines, there would have been a complete wipeout of our entire country. And dare I say, the world.
That's a stretch.
It may be a stretch, but we don't know. But I am grateful for the vaccine.
I didn't get the vaccine and I'm alive.
You are, but my grandmother is not alive. My great-grandmother is not alive.
Did she have the vaccine?
She did have the vaccine.
So then that argument would be fair. She had the vaccine.
No, it's not fair.
There are people who had the vaccine and who did not have the vaccine and still ended up in the same condition. We're talking about testing.
Science is science, right? There is going to be trial and error in science.
That's correct. Now let's go to this. You're talking about science.
We got about 20 seconds.
But what about the science when it comes to a man being a man and a woman being a woman?
So we'll wrap it up there. That's science. Because we can talk about that in my last point. We're going to take a short commercial break because Willie is ticking me off. We'll be back with Fact or Spin. This is Americana.
show, and we're already heating up. So anyway, welcome to those that are new viewers coming in. Thank you so much for tuning in to Americana, where we have the Republican and the Democrat perspective. We're going to be fair. We're going to be fair. Because this is what makes America go around. So again, put the comments in. What do you think about what we were just discussing? And give your feedback. It's important that we hear from you guys. This is how we're able to move forward and just have that conversation. Again, this is what makes America great again. I'm so excited about us having a bigly move. But nonetheless, y'all, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're getting ready to get back to the show. Yeah, have a good one.
Welcome back to Americana. Let's get into Fact or Spin.
This is my favorite part. Political personality disorder. Yes,
Lord.
Today's political personality disorder is constitutional crisis. So there has been a lot about Democrats spewing out that there is a false, it has basically been proven, a false constitutional crisis. They have baseless accusations, judicial overreach. Over 60% of Americans believe that the courts should not interfere with executive decisions. This is what we were talking about earlier about them coming in. It should not be that way. If the president of the United States is giving executive orders, I do believe he's making that for the best of the people, except for Joe Biden, of course. So historical context, obstructing governance, and public deception. That is all that has been coming from the Democrats when it comes to this is not constitutional. This is not. These are the same individuals, mind you, that not too long ago where they will come and they will have their own interpretation, misinformation, disinformation, and they will have their own interpretation of what the Constitution is until it applies to President Trump. And now it is this is not constitutional. It's amazing. Now, that's hypocrisy. This is the fetish that the Democrats have on such an administration that is actually shifting our country forward.
Can you raise your glass? I want to
Cheers.
toast. I am toasting to the fact that I am actually educating you on using the words that we've talked about, and now you're deciding to use them on me. That's the definition of gaslighting, ladies and gentlemen. So, are you done with your point?
I'm done.
You're done. Okay.
Proving the misinformation.
I am appalled, right? I'm appalled about a number of things, but you talk about constitutional, what you call it, constitutional delusion? Crisis. It's really unorthodox for, you said the President of the United States is making all these executive orders and everyone should be following suit, right? But what I also think is unorthodox and is really perplexing to me is how you have a private citizen who has full access to private information, Elon Musk. The other thing is, it's amazing how when Trump has appointed these different judges into place, and these judges are now standing on their own two God-given feet, they are now looked at as the enemy. That is the template that Trump has had in play since he's gotten into government, right? It's like, if you don't bend the knee, you are now an enemy of the state, and I'm going to come back and get you with a vengeance, right? But aside from that, I do want to talk about Black victimization. Do you know what that is?
Let's hear.
Yeah, let's hear it. Okay, I thought you would know because it was like on the headline of Fox News today. And I typically don't watch Fox because it's fake. And it's very biased. And so I was interested in what this article was about. So I clicked on it, and it was actually talking about a Black professor who took a role at Howard University, which is an HBCU, a historically Black college and university. I'm a product of an HBCU, hell Wildcats. And I think it was more of a demeaning phrase than it actually was educating the readers of their network. And so, and to me, I just want to ask the question, what is Black victimization? Do you have an idea of what that could be?
So let me put it like this, if this is where you're trying to go. So to me, there is not even necessarily just Black, but there is a victim, and I said this before, that we as Black Americans, we are not victims. We're not oppressed, or neither are we suppressed. We have the opportunities, just like everyone else to go forward. Myself.
Willie, do you really believe that wholeheartedly?
I have ran for Congress as a Black man in the United States of America.
Do you know why you were able to run for Congress?
Because I'm not a victim. I am a victor.
You are a victor. But do you know why you were able to run
Because
for office?
It is the United States of America, and the Constitution gives out what it requires for me to run for the United States.
Because of DEI,
Congress.
diversity, equity, and inclusion.
That is a new woke term.
It's not woke, Will.
It's a woke term.
It's not woke. And that doesn't, when I say DEI, DEI does not mean Black. It means fairness. It means for people who have disabilities, hidden or seen disabilities.
Does the United States Constitution not give that? It outlines a plan. You think that we have to create a whole separate name, title, acronym to represent what we can do according to the Constitution, our state's Constitution, and our United States Constitution?
In a world where slavery wasn't a thing, and fairness was at the core of who we were as a country, no, DEI wouldn't have to be an issue. But because we were built, this country actually was built on my ancestors' back, your ancestors' back, the people who own this station. We built this country. And because we built it, we don't always have seats at the table.
So tell me,
and you know this.
So tell me,
Will, you know that.
Do you think that it was just the Europeans that had enslaved us?
It was the... Excuse me? What'd you say?
Who was it that actually first enslaved?
Tell me, Will. Give me a history lesson, Will. No. You brought this question up.
Do you think that it was just the European, the white faces?
Who was it, Will?
That was it. What it came out of? It was blacks. Blacks was enslaving each other.
And sent us over here, right?
Okay, so
do you know why they did that?
But tell me,
it was the Europeans who deceived them.
Let's go.
Let's be clear.
But let's be clear. Here we are in the United States in 2025, because I want us to get here. Why is it, this is the victimization, why is it that Black people have to take, instead of using it as history to glean, to grow, to be empowered, to go forward, why do we take that, become the victim, instead of saying, this is the difference, read this book, The Gap and the Gain. This is the difference between that. The gap is, I'm a victim, I'm black, my country was built on this. The gain is, I am black and I'm sitting here today on a TV station. I'm black.
Yes,
that is what it. What,
it is
I'm gonna
a
get
game.
you a shirt. Yes, and
Please do. Please do, because I got to have this with your ass. Listen, I'm telling you, it is, yes, I am proud to sit at this table. Yes, I am proud to be black in America. Some of the freedoms that my ancestors built and fought for, stood and boycotted for, I am benefiting from that today. You too, although you don't believe in that. But I'm telling you, Will, like everything that you are saying about us not having victimization or that we shouldn't be the victim is not just it's not victimizing. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley just actually proposed a bill that would allow black Americans to have reparations. Do you know how huge this is?
We can talk about reparations. That'll be a good one to bring up. We're going to talk about reparations.
We can certainly talk about reparations.
But we'll say this, because we get ready to close. I'm going to let you
we got to close. Lord have mercy. We got so much to talk about.
So in this last little bit of thing I have to say. Okay.
We got to wrap.
We'll see.
Okay, y'all. So put your comments in the chat. Thank y'all so much for tuning into Americana. Catch us here weekdays at 6:30. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening.
Tomorrow.